What an honor and a privilege it was to speak to David Newman, who's from the legendary Newman composing family. My father actually worked with his cousin Randy Newman, who did the scores for the Toy Story movies, but my father worked with him years ago. And now David, who has a lengthy resume of his own, is an Oscar nominated composer, and he's also done the scores for Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, the sequel, which I believe is called Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. I'm pulling that out of my ass, but I think I'm right. But more recently, he did the music for West Side Story, which is now streaming on Disney Plus and HBO Max. If you have either of them, I highly recommend it. I love the original film, and much like David, although David's just a master of this play. I mean, you'll hear him talk so passionately, which I just found so interesting. He clearly was passionate about this project. He wanted to bring, his A game to it and bring something new to the table while also paying such respect to the original project. So I hope you guys enjoy me talking to David. It's a I would say it's a very casual interview. I think that he goes off on tangents that I wasn't expecting, which is great for me. I loved hearing him talk, and I loved hearing his perspective, specifically on the Oscars, which you'll hear pretty early on in the interview. So, for all you musicians out there, I know you'll enjoy this. He's a very deep thinker, and I think he's got some very interesting, things from a music perspective. But I also think hearing him talk just about the film world and West Side Story is great. So, with that being said, sit back, relax. I'll let David and I take it away. Well, first off, congratulations on West Side Story. It's an amazing, accomplishment. And I did want to touch on, your family first. Is it true that your family, you come from a composing family, and I think I read that you guys are the most, nominated family? Is that in the Oscars?
Yes, the whole thing is kind of silly. I mean, I don't know if you know much about what's going on with the Academy Awards now and the brouhaha about the original score
Yeah.
category being not live, and and it seems like a kind of elitist argument. It
Hmm.
just seems sort of silly. My father was nominated the most, I mean, close to 50 times and won 9 Academy Awards. He was Alfred Newman.
Yeah.
I mean, he worked from 1930 to 19. So he was there at the beginning of talking films, and he always kind of thought he won 9 of them,
Mhm.
and he always thought it was kind of silly. I mean, yeah, it's great to win an Academy Award, of course, but
Mhm.
um, so, Tom has been, my brother Thomas has been nominated, I think 13 or 14 times, hasn't won. Randy has been nominated a bunch of times, has won, I just think in the song category. I've been nominated once.
Okay.
It's just that there's just a lot of us doing it. My cousin Joey Newman is doing it now. My sister Maria. Um, it's just sort of a numbers game, but I don't know. It's kind of silly in a way. I know people are always looking at ways to grid art,
Hmm.
the worth of art, and how you qualify success. And I guess in a sense, movies are one, money, how much money it makes, and two, how many awards it wins.
Yeah.
Those sometimes don't sync up, but obviously, because the Academy Awards, generally the movies that make a lot of money aren't the ones that win awards. But
Mm. Oh,
you know
so your thoughts on the original score not being televised? You don't really care much for that?
No, I mean, I think first of all, I think ABC licenses the show, and they're in the business of ratings,
Okay.
right?
Right.
The Academy Awards, there's nothing you can do about any number of production numbers, jokes. It's not why people tune in. They
Hmm.
tune in because they want to see the celebrities and because they like the films. So the more films that aren't popular that get nominated, the less people are going to watch. It doesn't matter what you do. So why not have a completely chaotic, weird show with a bunch of categories you might not know and a lot of people might be bored with, but who cares? I mean, it's a 4 hour boring show anyway. I mean, it's just chaos. So what it does do in our community is it grids a hierarchy. So why is, for instance, original songs, as great as they have been in movies, right now they really are not much of a they're not much of a force. I mean, there might be, one or two or three songs, and then there's an hour of underscore music that is part of the filmmaking process. So it but it's only to our little community. I mean,
Hmm.
who cares? But if we're gonna put on a show that's dedicated to the art of filmmaking, all these art forms, the whole idea of the Academy is that everything's equal. That's why it's structured that way. It's very bizarre that they did it, but I don't expect anybody except in our little community to understand or care, So
Okay, well, I
that's
do
sort of
find
how I
that
look
in.
at it.
Oh,
Go
sorry to
ahead.
cut you off. No, but I find that so fascinating coming from your perspective because I asked another composer the same thing, and she had said the same thing that like her community cares, but the music community, but the general audience doesn't. But I think, like you said, it is kind of challenging because then you're putting other categories above it, right,
The
in some
thing,
way.
the thing is, the best Academy Award show is when things go terrible.
Yeah.
The bad, announcing the wrong winner. I
Mm,
used to play. I was a violinist in my 20s. I played like 7 Academy Awards in a row for 7 years, and it's insane. It's a great, crazy show. It's like what people say about being in war. I'm not equating it to being in a wartime thing, but it's 95% boring, and then 5% utterly fascinating, seeing stuff that you would never expect to see. That's the charm of the Academy Awards. Doing production numbers, and they're only good if they're bad. Who
mm,
cares? I mean, you know, coming. It's not a venue for stand up. I mean, anyway, not to belabor this, but I think there. ABC pays a lot of money. They have their thoughts about what it should be, and the Academy has to run around and try to, make, fix it, and
mm,
if they can. And so they've been talking about this for years, but they actually did it this year.
mm.
So,
Yeah. No, I mean it's honestly just
and
fascinating to hear your
editing and
perspective.
film editing,
Right.
film editing isn't. What are you talking about? Film editing is almost the thing next to directing. They're the ones that work with the directors the whole time.
Mm.
How could that be a category that's not, I'm sure they just did, focus groups and said, well, what are the most interesting categories, and whatever.
Yeah. No, but I'm glad to hear your perspective on that. I truly do find that fascinating. And like I said, I mean, you are from family composers, as I said. My dad actually worked with Randy on
Oh,
what was it, with Breakfast with the Arts? I think he was on that for A&E. My dad used to be,
oh.
he'd work on set, in teleprompting and whatnot, or doing construction, not construction, but anyways. So was composing like the only like natural choice for you with a career?
Nah, no.
No. Okay.
I didn't want to be a composer. That's like I said, I was
Really?
I was a violinist, and then I wanted to be a conductor, and I spent my 20s banging around trying to get a job as a conductor, a classical music conductor,
Okay.
and I just got nowhere. I mean, I learned a lot. I learned how to conduct for sure. And I did a lot of conducting, but it just, it's a weird thing. It wasn't for me.
Mm,
So I made a decision to do composing. I had no experience composing, but my brother and I, Tom, were really well trained from way back. I mean, we started violin when we were 7 years old, and piano and theory and counterpoint. I mean, we were trained musicians by the time we were 13 or 14 years old. And if you're a trained musician and you have the guts, you can figure it out. I mean, I had 4 or 5 years of just, very frustrating trying to switch over to composing. Wasn't easy for me. But I did it and made a good career out of it.
yeah.
Now I'm doing a lot of conducting again, these movies with live orchestra. So I guess things come around full circle.
Do you prefer do you prefer composing over
I think
conducting?
I think I do, but conducting's pretty cool when it's with a really great orchestra. Like these orchestras here, and then the ones the New York Phil and the L.A. Phil, and and all that stuff. I mean, it's it's wonderful. There's really not much time. Conducting, it's just a couple of rehearsals, a couple of performances. Composing, you go for months all day, and I think ultimately composing is the uber thing to do in music,
Mhm.
either writing songs or writing music.
So then, how did the project of the new West Side Story, how did you land that? I mean, and what was your reaction to being offered that opportunity?
Well, I had done the movie with live orchestra in 2011.
Oh, okay.
I'm very, very close with John Williams. I've split a lot of concerts with him recently, when he doesn't want to conduct an entire concert. And he recommended me.
Oh,
I know West Side Story backwards and forwards. I've said on a lot of these interviews and podcasts, I'm not an arranger orchestrator. I am a composer. I orchestrate for myself. I do not do, Broadway conducting or arranging or anything. But this is a one-off. This is a completely hybrid thing, and I know West Side Story from from being a kid. So I didn't know how it was going to turn out when I got involved in it, but I'm thrilled to pieces with the way it turned out.
Yeah.
Um, I just read something which you should check out. Um, it's an IndieWire article that the choreographer Justin Peck
Hmm.
was interviewed. That is a really good distillation of where we all ended up with West Side Story and kind of why it wasn't quote unquote a redo, a rebrand. It was a really weird hybrid one-off thing that I've been in my interviews trying to explain.
Hmm.
But it's if you send me your email, I'll send you the link because it is a in terms of the choreography, it's a good distillation of what he did.
Sure. Yeah, you can either send it to my email or you could put it in the chat and then I can copy and paste it.
All right,
Whatever.
maybe I'll do that. Hang on, I'll put it in the chat. Check it out because there's an analog to music with it too.
Okay.
It's not like we didn't have to do stuff. It's just it was all based on Bernstein's West Side Story.
So I was just
It
gonna ask that.
wasn't
Yeah.
it wasn't rethought.
Okay.
It takes the have you seen the movie?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so it takes place in the late 50s when it originally take place. So it's not in some future time or past time, And I've been saying from my point of view, the music point of view, it's more like an opera production where if you do, La Boheme 80 billion times, that's done. The music's the same, the text is the same, but sometimes the productions are wildly different. And where they went different on this was the screenplay and some of the settings of the songs, but it still looks like it's Jerome Robbins.
Right.
And the music still feels like it's all Bernstein because it is. Even
Right.
though there are little things here and there that are inserted and I did an arrangement of somewhere, but a lot of it's Bernstein and, blah, blah, blah. But our goal was not to, quote unquote, redo it.
Right.
Hip it up for Hollywood or a retelling of the story. It was to present West Side Story as a great 20th century work of art in a movie where the camera and the sound and the choreography and the music and everything was all in service of the story of West Side Story,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
No, it does, and I do want to touch more on the actual, whatever you want to call it, reimagining or reworking, whatever people want to call it. But you did mention Somewhere, which is something my cousin loved, and he mentioned that. Did you is that a song that you changed at all, like the different instrumentation or different
Yeah.
change of key? Okay, could you describe
Well,
that a little bit?
there were changes of key.
Okay.
That's normal. I mean, when you do the Broadway show, you're not supposed to change the key, but in a movie, you can change. A lot of the songs are a step up, a step down, because we're trying to grit it to the actors.
Okay.
This one was Spielberg's idea was to have it. He changed Doc to a woman,
Hmm.
to Doc's widow, to Valentina, to Rita Moreno, and he wanted her to sing it. They had planned for her to sing it where it's sung, which is different than the movie, which is different than the Broadway show. So Somewhere is the song that is the least iconic. I mean, it's the most iconic, one of the most iconic songs,
Yeah.
say covered songs. But in terms of its structure in West Side Story, it's kind of amorphous. You can use it in a lot of different places. So Tony and Stephen plan to use it where it's used after. I mean, I guess that's sort of where it is in the movie. It's just that Tony and Maria sing it in the movie, the 61 movie, and in the Broadway show, it's sung by an opera singer off stage during the ballet.
Hmm.
So originally she was going to sing it a cappella,
Okay.
meaning no instrumentation at all. She was just going to kind of sing it. And so then on the set, I think Stephen thought about it and thought, nah, we're not going to do that. So they stitched together some whatever, and she sang it. And then when we went back and started dealing with it, we thought, okay, we want to keep some of the idea of a cappella, so it's recit. So it starts very spare with a piano, which Janine Tesori, the vocal person, kind of worked out. And then the second verse comes in, and we used the Broadway part of it. And then in the bridge, in the thing before the final verse, we come out again, which is not none of the other arrangers had done that. Well, she sort of, so the whole idea was it to be kind of what we call an opera recitative. She's kind of speaking it, thinking it, rather than beautifully singing it. In the Broadway show, it's generally an opera singer, they get to sing it.
Yeah.
And then in the movie, it was Tony and Maria. Maria was Marnie. Natalie Wood was dubbed by Marnie Nixon, who's a fabulous singer, and Richard Beamer was, I don't know who dubbed him, but two singers sang it.
Right.
She's not. I mean, she's a singer, but she's not. So that's sort of how that came together. Just very much in post production that we kind of decided what to do with that. But that's really the farthest afield we went.
Okay. And before
any of the numbers.
Yeah, and before I continue too far, I think I had said 10 to 15 minutes. Is it okay if I go a little longer? I just have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Well, and I did want to ask you about, because this is a little bit different than like just doing a score for a film where, you scored a scene or whatever. Did you have to do the music before the...
Yeah, we did we pre-recorded everything. But you pre-record everything in this. It's the movies, and we have lots of technology now that they did not have in the 60s. I mean, amazing technology. Also, incredible people that know how to use the technology, that have ears. So it's one thing to tune a vocal, to dramatize a vocal, to deal. A lot of what was done with the vocal performances, right? But you have to have ears to know that nobody can tell that it's being, manipulated. Excuse my French. I mean, there is shit in, shit out. You need to get good bones, and then you can adjust it, a little bit. So now I lost the train of thought. What was your question? Because I was going somewhere with this.
Well, I was asking the process of, you did this.
Oh, right. Okay, so we pre-recorded everything. With the singers and the dancers were there, and we get all the tempos. I did most of it. Gustavo did some of it too. It all gets said, it all gets done, it's done, and then they go and they shoot for 5 months or whatever they do, and they play back, and they dance to it, and they sing to it, and they, all that. All right, great. They put the film together, then they start messing around with it, and they say, no, we need 8 bars in the middle of America. We need to extend it 8 bars. So they make some bad edit in the editing room with the editor, who is now not going to be a live Academy Award nominee. And it's a terrible edit, and they know it's bad. They just say, okay, Dave, I need 8 bars here, and I don't want anybody to note it. It needs to be inevitable that this has always been there, right? So in post-production, just multiply that by, 50, 100, whatever it was, times. Then there also are some cues. At the last third of the movie has several underscore cues. A lot of that's drawn from Broadway. The incidental, because there's a lot of incidental music in the Broadway show. But some of it, it needs to be stitched together and seem, again, inevitable. So there's that to do. There was the somewhere thing to do. And the last thing we ended up doing was the prologue, because we hadn't done the prologue because he kept editing the prologue. So there was a lot to do in the prologue. Now, the bones were there because, the prologue's like 9 minutes. So I'm talking about maybe a minute of that or 2 minutes of that here and there needs some work that they didn't have when they were shooting. So the thing about movies is it's so made up in a way, but then it's cut and dubbed and everything to seem as real and three-dimensional as possible. But if you just do this a few times as a composer, because you're in all the way to the end, you can see, you have to fix stuff.
Mm.
And so a lot of what you do is fix stuff, and then you don't want to call attention to, it's like they unstitch something, and you want to put in a little piece of cloth and stitch it back together, and then you want it to look like it was always there.
Right.
So that's kind of what our department is doing. We might even mess around with the vocals a little bit here and there with the, it's all in service of, as we say, quote unquote, helping tell the story of West Side Story.
Hmm. Yeah, and some of the, there are some amazing voices in the film. What
Yeah,
was your first
no, they're
reaction
all,
to? Yeah, and I just, in particular, I think Rachel's story, Rachel
yeah,
Zegler's story, is amazing. How she even got
yeah.
handpicked, and what was, when you first heard her sing, whether it was on set or whatever it was, or
Well,
beforehand.
Janine Tesori has worked a lot with Tony Kushner. She was the vocal producer.
Okay.
She was in on it from the beginning.
Mm.
So when they were casting, she was probably in on it 6 months before I think I started late 2018
Mm.
maybe. Then we worked all through the winter of 19, and then they shot 19, and then we started in 20, excuse me, 19. And then at the end of 19, we started posting, and then we got up to 20 March, and then it shut down.
Right.
Can we pause a second? I'm kind of losing my.
Sure, sure.
I just want to get. I'll be right back.
I don't remember exactly where you stopped, but I know we were talking. Oh, the vocal director, and she.
Yeah, she's the one that her and Steven and Tony cast them all.
Right.
So I heard them sing when I came on. It was obvious Rachel could really sing.
Hmm.
Some of the others needed, to be worked with and everything, but none of them could not sing. It wasn't like a musical where they cast people that couldn't sing, and then it was really like Gewalt. And quite frankly, what was so endearing about it is everyone was so young, and there wasn't anybody like super well known, so there was no one to bump you out of the story.
Mm.
It's just brilliant casting. It really was. I love how tall Ansel is compared to Rachel.
Hmm.
They made that work too, and some, as I said, were stronger than others, but Janine worked with them for months. They rehearsed for months.
Yeah.
And what was so cool about it, I think, is where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
In New York, but now I'm in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Were you involved in high school musicals at all? Like
No.
Rachel was? Okay.
No.
I grew up in West Side of Los Angeles. High school music. I went to a big public high school. High school musicals were it was even better than football or basketball, right? Even though it was good. I mean, there were at least 300 or 400 kids out of maybe 4,000 kids that were involved, and it was an entire semester. So one year we did West Side Story, like when I was in 11th grade. That nobody ever wanted to go home. Everyone would have rehearsed all day, every day, from the friendships you made to how beautiful the music is, and you can barely sing it. The orchestra can barely play it, whatever it is. But the love, the feeling of being involved in an art like that, to me, that's what Spielberg got imbued into this film. Hiring like Rachel, she probably came off a high school musical. You know what I mean? Just right. And those guys, like when we had the premiere in New York in December 2020 at the Jazz Center at Lincoln Center. And the whole middle, I don't know if you've been to that venue, you probably have been to that venue. So the whole middle section is everyone. It's all the actors, it's all the Jets, it's all the Sharks, all the peripheral people. And it was like watching it with 11th graders. It was like everyone screaming for themselves when they come on, and normally premieres are kind of like this, but this was something like I remember with great joy and love what it was like being in a high school musical with the best people working in Hollywood, and and enough money to do everything. That article that you'll read with Justin kind of points to that as well. He makes a really good point about how difficult it is to ramp up a musical of this size these days without a department that's used to doing it ad hoc. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, West Side Story means so much to you. It's clear just by talking to you, and I think that that's amazing. Is there any scene what was your, is there a scene that in this film that you're most proud of? Maybe it's I always think of Tonight. That's always the one that every time I think of this film,
Yeah,
I'll always go back. Of course, it's an iconic
I
one.
I think Cool is amazing.
Mhm.
And I think I love the quintet, the Tonight
Mhm.
Quintet. And I think the prologue's awesome.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
mean, to use a West Coast bro word. But all of it, it just to me, when I actually sat down and after being away from it for a couple of months, just the sound, the way the camera moves. Again, Justin, you'll see in this article, it's exactly right. The camera move, like that shot when they come into the dance at the gym that everyone's talking about on Facebook. I hope more people see it now that it's streaming. Though it's in a theater, it's overwhelming in a theater.
Mhm.
The beautifulness and the sound, but every move in it is made to tell the story of West Side Story.
Mhm.
I just and these guys are like all Academy Award. I mean, it's the top of the top making the film. It was just an honor to be there watching it, hanging out, and seeing how this got done. And nobody is inserting themselves into it at all. They all have some story about West Side Story when they were young, whatever it is. Everyone loves it. It's an American iconic piece of music. To me, this is a movie that the music deserves.
Mhm.
I just think it's extraordinary.
So is this the definitive adaptation, at least for film, like more so than the '60s, or?
I love the '61 movie. I don't know what you could say definitive. I think right now it's the best recorded version.
Mhm.
Gustavo came and redid everything. I mean, it's spectacular. The New York Philharmonic and LA Phil, it's spectacular.
Yeah.
But we have everyone knows how to play it now. I don't know if you or your guys that your listeners. There's this thing in classical music, like the piece, like Beethoven's Ninth Symphony in the early 19th century. Probably nobody could play it. It was just too hard to play, so they play it. But it's like and then in 20th century, it's Rite of Spring, and the best professional orchestra can hardly play it. Now a high school almost can play it. So West Side Story is really difficult to play. 1957 than 1960. Now anybody, now it's like Olympic athletes. It just musicians get better and better each generation for whatever reason. So we have great technology now. The New York Philharmonic is the DNA of West Side Story because that was Bernstein's orchestra during that time. So uh, you know, I would say it's definitely the definitive recording of West Side Story. But it's not an opera. It's not. There are other recordings that do different things.
Mhm.
And I would say right now it's a definitive version. I don't know that it is the definitive version if there is such a thing. Again, it's more like an opera production. And it I don't know that anyone else is going to do anything like this the way this was done, but it shows a path to how to do this.
Mhm.
You know,
And to circle back to what you originally were talking about was how some people are calling it a remake or rework. I mean, I've I think I've heard the argument that it's more based on the play or whatever. But
it is
what would you say to
Broadway.
people that are kind of there are so many people that were skeptical to even watch it because they love the original film or they love the Broadway play. But I mean, hearing you talk might justify it already. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on why people
Well,
should
I,
watch
I
it.
was skeptical too.
Mm.
And everyone I talked to, all my friends, I mean, we're all, we're on this little bubble in, film music in the west side of Los Angeles. And um, all of us love the 61. I've done the 61 film probably 40 times with
Mm.
orchestras all over the place. Um, but you sit down and watch it and you just, as soon, as soon as that camera pans in, you see the Lincoln Center and them destroying it, and the sound and the music floats in, and they come out of that dungeon. They're being it's just you just lose it. I mean, and then when you see the title West Side Story, even the way it looks, the art design
Mm.
of it's it's just so sincere as opposed to being cynical.
Mm.
And it's so easy to get cynical about a show. You can think of lots of examples. oh yeah, this song's good, but nah, this song we need to redo and fix, and this we need to and yeah, we can do it so much better, and let's pander to this, and this could have been a culture war pandering movie too. I mean, I mean, some people have criticized it, but this is completely true to the show and the movie, and but it's clear there is more depth in the shark's life. Those Bernardo and Anita's life, and Maria's life, and Tony's life, and Riff's life, and Valentina, the Doc character. It's all more motivated and everything. So it doesn't take away from the Broadway or the film. It's the way generally classical music art works. It's generally not the way popular art works, though to some degree it is. But classical music generally, something is a masterpiece, and it becomes canonical, meaning it's played over and over and over. As long as there's symphony orchestras, they're going to play Beethoven's symphonies. Therefore, it's in the canon. As long as there's symphony orchestras, they're now going to play the Bernstein symphonic dances, which he did in 1961 based on West Side Story. That is in the canon of classical Western music concert orchestral playing. And now that's a 1 in a million at least proposition. 1 in a million pieces, or 2 million, or whatever, are going to get into the canon. So West Side Story, to me, drifts more towards that end, the classical Western art project end, which is a process of rediscovering something, but that's there. You're not doing something completely different. In opera, the production can bleed. Bohem's going to be the same music, the same text. It could take place on the moon. It could take place in ancient Japan or whatever. But the music and the text are going to be the same, and the story has to be therefore the same. Now, we didn't go that far, but it leans to me more that way.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of fidelity to West Side Story.
Yeah.
Even when you're changing, you're thinking, can I do this? Is this work? Is this in the spirit of it? We tried initially with music to do other things, and it just doesn't, it just felt wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Much of film music is trying things and seeing if it sticks or not, if it feels wrong or not. Sometimes you're not objective about it, but you play it for somebody and then you go, oh yeah, this is wrong. This is, you just know, when it's right, generally.
Mm-hmm.
And a good director is always trying to navigate everyone, because it's a film, right? It's not people, it's a thing. And by the time it gets edited and put together, you have to do what it asks for, or a good director does that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, congratulations on it again. It's such an
Thanks.
accomplishment to be, proud of. And I truly mean that. I think
I
it's,
appreciate it.
and, I was so interested in listening to you and your responses, and I really can't express my gratitude for your time.